Hello class, today we are going to explore the art of the Civil War, specifically artwork done by Winslow Homer. And this lesson will give you insight to the reasons why artists create and the meaning behind their work. The reason for a flipped classroom is to create more independent learners who can receive direct instruction at home while completing assignments and projects in the classroom. And you will be tested on the concepts and ideas I go over, so please pay close attention and you can rewind if you need to. So there were two purposes of art during the Civil War. There were works of art created as a form of news, and there were works of art created as memory and identity. And Winslow Homer was famous for both creating works of art as form of news and for creating works of art as memory and identity. And we're going to cover both of those. Now to begin this lesson, I want you to take out your journals and I want you to write down some ideas responding to these journal prompts, and I will display them at the end of the lesson so you can answer them thoroughly. But just so you have these questions in mind as I go through the lesson, I wanted to show them early. So, how do artists convey meaning and feeling through works of art? How can artworks tell us about a culture or society? And what can we learn from studying art? Okay, so think about these questions as I go through the slides. So the Civil War was one of the first American wars to be widely covered by artists and photographers. And these are works of art as a form of news. So, as artist Winslow Homer shows in his 1862 illustration, News from the War, which is shown on the left, everyone from soldiers to civilians craved information about the conflict. So Homer had been at war for the past 4 years, but rather than fighting, he had been an artist correspondent. So Harper's Weekly sent him to Virginia to cover the front lines of the war. For the duration of the war, he sketched soldiers both on and off the battlefield to bring news to civilians. So during this period, the images that artists created became a central part of people's understanding of events. Even those living far away from the battlefield could stay updated on news from the war. So people really depended on receiving news to know what was happening around them. There were also works of art as memory and identity. So not just the news that was documenting the war, but works of art that showed meaning and feeling to the viewers. So after the war, artists created works of art that acted as memorials to help keep the thrills of victories, the disaster of defeats, and the memory of lost loved ones alive in the heart and minds of Americans. So Winslow Homer painted this work of art that's shown in the background. It's called The Veteran in the New Field. His painting gives insight to the feelings of those affected by the war, and we will work to analyze this work of art in the next slide. Although this painting looks rather simple at first sight, there's a lot of symbolism going on. So when we first look at the painting, we see the figure. He looks like a farmer, and he's holding a scythe and cutting down the hay in the field. So the scythe represents actually something that the Grim Reaper holds that symbolizes death. And he's carrying it, so he's carrying the deaths of the fallen soldiers from the war. And we also have the cut wheat that he has cut down, and that is symbolic of dead Civil War soldiers who were killed in the battlefield, and is also symbolic of the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. We then have the wheat that is growing in the field that he's cutting down. This suggests the nation's hope for peace and prosperity following the Civil War, because the nation was so torn. The bright sunlight also represents the light at the end of the tunnel and a bright future for America. And then we have, he has taken off his jacket, probably because he's hot in the sun. And it's a Union Civil War uniform jacket. It indicates that he was a soldier. Okay, so overall this painting represents life after the war. Okay, so this painting was done by Winslow Homer. It's called The Veteran in the New Fields because America is going to be a new nation following the Civil War and the torn nation. So now that you have some insight to why artists create works of art and the purposes of creating works of art during the Civil War, I want you to answer these questions in your journal and bring them to class tomorrow so we can have a class discussion. So how do artists convey meaning and feeling through works of art? How can artworks tell us about a culture or society? And what can we learn from studying art? So following our class discussion on the journal prompts that you responded to, we're going to get into groups of 3 or 4. And in your groups, you're going to research a work of art from the timeline in the Edmodo classroom. So there's a link on there, and you'll want to go to the timeline, and there'll be works of art from different artists that worked during the Civil War. Pick one of those, and you want to research that with your group. And then you want to prepare a presentation that you're going to deliver to the class about the artist, the reasons why the work of art was created, and how it affected the viewers. For your final project, you will present an original work of art along with your group that represents the life of someone living through the Civil War. You will use visual elements to convey meaning and feelings to the viewer, and this will be installed at our class exhibition, and you'll present to members of the community, myself, and your classmates. So thank you for watching. Don't forget to go to the timeline and check that out on the Edmodo classroom, and also complete the quiz on this presentation, as well as bring your journal prompts responses to class tomorrow. All right, have a good night.